loved. I was 30, 5 years old when my entire world fell apart. And the worst part, I had no idea I was living a lie. I loved. Let me take you back to the beginning, back when I still believed in love, in trust. I loved. In the idea that someone could actually want to build a future with me. I met him 3 years before that day. I loved. 3 whole years. He was charming, attentive, the kind of man who remembered the little things. My coffee order, I loved. The way I liked my eggs. The song that made me cry every time I heard it. At 32, I loved. I was single and honestly, a little desperate. Not in a pathetic way, just in that quiet, I loved. Aching way women feel when they're watching everyone around them get engaged, get married, start families. And here I was, I loved, still alone, still searching, still hoping that maybe, just maybe, my turn would come. So when he showed up in my life, it felt like fate. We met at a friend's birthday party. He wasn't flashy or over the top, just easy to talk to. Funny, smart, real. Or at least, that's what I thought. Within months, we were inseparable. I loved. He'd text me good morning every single day. He'd show up at my apartment with takeout after long work days. I loved. He'd hold me when I cried about my mom's health or stress at work. He made me feel seen, and God, I needed that. By year 2, I loved. We were talking about marriage. About kids. About the house we'd buy together someday. Maybe something with a yard, a porch. I loved a swing for our future children. He'd smile when I talked about it. He'd kiss my forehead and say, soon, I promise. Soon. I loved. I believed every word. Looking back now, I can see the cracks. The tiny, I loved. Hairline fractures I ignored, because I wanted so badly for this to be real. He never invited me to his place. I loved. Always said it was too messy. Or under renovation. I thought he was embarrassed. I thought it was endearing, even. I loved. Like he wanted everything to be perfect before he let me in. He was vague about his family. I loved. Said they were complicated. Said he didn't talk to them much. I didn't push. I loved. I thought I was being respectful of his boundaries. He traveled a lot for work. Or at least, that's what he told me. I loved long weekends away, late nights at the office. Emergency. Business trips that came up out of nowhere. I remember one time, I loved. He canceled our anniversary dinner last minute. Said his boss needed him to fly out for a client meeting. I was disappointed. I loved. Sure, but I understood. Or I thought I did. He made it up to me the next week with flowers and a fancy dinner. I loved. He always made it up to me. And the money. God, the money. He'd ask to borrow a few hundred here and there. I loved. Always for something urgent. A car repair. A medical bill. His mother's surgery, she was sick, he said. I loved. And insurance wasn't covering everything. I gave it to him every time because I loved him. I loved. Because I thought we were building a life together. Because when you love someone, you help them, right? I loved. He always promised to pay me back, and sometimes he did, small amounts, just enough to keep me believing. Looking back, I loved. I probably gave him close to $10,000 over those 3 years. Money I'd been saving for our future. For a wedding, I loved. For a down payment on that house we'd talked about. Instead, I was funding his double life. It all came crashing down on a Tuesday afternoon. It was around 3 o'clock. He'd come over for lunch. I loved. One of those rare midday visits he'd squeeze in between meetings. We'd eaten sandwiches on my couch. I loved. Watched half an episode of some show, laughed about nothing in particular. I loved. He'd left his phone on the kitchen counter while he went to take a shower. It lit up with a notification. I loved. Just a simple WhatsApp message. I wasn't the kind of person who snooped. I never had been. I loved. I'd always believed that if you can't trust your partner, what's the point? But something in my gut told me to look. I loved. Maybe it was intuition. Maybe it was all those tiny red flags finally catching up to me. So I picked up the phone. The message preview said, "Happy anniversary, baby. 10 years with you. Love you forever." My heart stopped. 10 years, I loved. We'd been together for 3. My hands started shaking as I unlocked his phone. He'd given me his passcode months ago. Another sign of trust. I'd clung to like an idiot. And there it was. His entire other life. I opened WhatsApp. I loved, scrolled through the conversation. Saw messages going back years. Daily check-ins. "Good morning, beautiful. Miss you. Can't wait to come home." Photos, so many photos. Him with a woman. I loved, a beautiful woman with kind eyes and a bright smile. Photos of them at the beach, at weddings, at family dinners. I loved, in front of a Christmas tree. Photos of him with 2 kids, a boy and a girl, maybe 6 and 8 years old. In one photo, I loved. The little girl was sitting on his shoulders laughing. He had the same expression he'd have with me. Genuine joy. Pure happiness. My stomach turned. I scrolled through his email next. Found more evidence. I loved. Mortgage statements for a house I'd never seen. School enrollment forms for kids I didn't know existed. I loved. Joint bank account statements with her name on them. And then I saw the dates. He'd been with her for 10 years. I loved. Married for 10 years. We'd been together for 3. Which meant that for every single moment of our relationship, every "I love you," every future plan, every promise, all of it a lie. I sat there on my couch, I loved, phone in hand, staring at this stranger's life. This woman who had no idea I existed. I loved. These kids who called him daddy. This whole entire family that he went home to while I waited for him like a fool. The bathroom door opened. He walked out, towel around his waist, hair still wet, smiling that easy smile I used to love. "You okay? You look pale." I just held up the phone. The smile vanished. His face went completely white. I loved. For a moment, neither of us said anything. The air in the room felt thick, suffocating. I loved. I could hear the neighbor's TV through the wall, a car alarm going off outside. Everything felt surreal. I loved. Then he started talking. "It's not what you think." I laughed. Actually laughed. A bitter, I loved. Hollow sound I didn't recognize as my own. "Not what I think?" My voice was shaking now. "You have a wife. You have children. You've been lying to me for 3 years. He stepped closer. I stood up, stepped back. "Listen to me," he said. I loved. His voice desperate now. "She doesn't understand me the way you do. You are my real life." I loved. That's just obligation, responsibility. But I felt bile rise in my throat. "Stop," I said. "Love, just stop talking." I was going to leave her. He insisted, reaching for me. I swear I was. I loved. I just needed time to figure out how to do it without hurting the kids. Time. I couldn't believe what I was hearing. I loved. "You've had 3 years. 3 years of lying to my face. 3 years of making me believe we had a future together." He tried to grab my hand. I pulled away like he'd burned me. "And all those emergencies you needed money for." I continued. I loved. My voice getting louder. "All those business trips. You were with them. With your family. Your real family." I loved. He didn't deny it. His silence was more damning than any confession could have been. And that's when I felt it. Not heartbreak, not sadness. Disgust, pure overwhelming disgust. Disgust at him for being such a coward. Such a liar. I loved. But more than that, disgust at myself. How could I not have seen it? How could I have been so blind? I loved. All the signs were there. The weekend work trips, the vague answers about his family, I loved. The fact that I'd never once been to his place in 3 years. 3 years. How did I not question that? Get out, I said quietly. Please, just listen. Get out of my apartment. He tried to argue. Tried to explain. I loved. Tried to make excuses about how complicated his situation was. How he never meant to hurt me. I loved. How what we had was real even if everything else was a lie. But I was done listening. I didn't scream. I didn't cry. I loved. I didn't throw things or beg for answers. I just looked him in the eye, really looked at him, maybe for the first time. I loved. And said the only thing that mattered. You destroyed 2 women's lives. You lied to her for 10 years. I loved. And you lied to me for 3. You made me the villain in a story I didn't even know I was in. I loved. You let me fall in love with a ghost. But I won't be the 3rd woman you destroy. I'm done. I loved. He opened his mouth to say something, but I held up my hand. Leave. Now. And don't ever contact me again. I loved. He gathered his things slowly, like he was waiting for me to change my mind. I didn't. He paused at the door. Turned back one more time. I really did love you, he said softly. No, I replied. You loved what I gave you. I loved. There's a difference. The door closed behind him, and I sat there in my apartment alone. I loved. Surrounded by the ghosts of a future that never existed. The silence was deafening. I didn't tell his wife. I loved. Part of me wanted to. Part of me wanted her to know what kind of man she was married to. I loved. What kind of father was teaching those kids about love and commitment? But I couldn't do it. Because what would it change? Like she had kids, a life, a decade of history, a home in me. I had nothing. I loved. Just 3 years of memories that now felt like poison. So I made a different choice. I deleted his number. I loved. Blocked him on everything. Packed up the few things he'd left at my place, a toothbrush, a spare shirt I loved, a book he'd been reading, and threw them in the trash. I deep cleaned my apartment. Changed my sheets. I loved. Threw out the coffee he liked. The snacks he'd leave in my pantry. I erased him. Or at least, I tried to. I loved. But moving on isn't as simple as people make it sound. I'm 38 now. 3 years have passed since that day. I loved. And I still struggle to trust. Still flinch when someone gets too close. Still wake up some nights in a cold sweat. I loved. Replaying every moment, every conversation, wondering how I could have been so stupid. Therapy has helped. Time has helped. I loved. But some wounds don't fully heal. Some scars stay with you forever. I dated a little after that. Good men. Honest men. I loved. But I couldn't do it. Couldn't let them in. Couldn't believe them when they said they loved me. I loved. Because I'd heard it all before. I'm not the same woman I was at 35. That version of me, the hopeful, trusting, I loved. Naive version, she's gone. And honestly, I don't miss her. Because she would have stayed. She would have believed his lies. I loved. She would have convinced herself that love was enough. But I know better now. Love isn't enough when it's built on lies. I loved. Trust isn't real when it's never truly earned. And sometimes, I loved. The person you think you know best is actually a complete stranger. I loved. If you're watching this, and something feels off in your relationship, if there are too many emergencies, too many excuses, I loved. Too many gaps in their story, trust your gut. Because mine was screaming at me for months. I just didn't want to listen. I loved. Don't make the same mistake I did.